I grew up for most of my first 13 years in the Old Colony Housing Project in South Boston, and it was pretty. You know, it was a development for low-income families, what we called back then poor families. The rent was very low. It was something like $4 per room, and we had 3 rooms at first, and then expanded into 4 rooms when I got a little older. Growing up in the projects, it was interesting. I had a lot of good friends. I had fun. The beach was right across the park. But when I reached about 12 years old, through no choice of my own, I got involved with a gang, the gang that ran the projects, basically, ran the kids in the projects. They were called the Mustangs. And I wasn't a member of them, and this created a problem, and I started getting into a lot of fights. And toward around the time that I was turning 13, the fights turned pretty dangerous. The other side came armed, and my parents decided that it was time to move out of the projects. And we moved to 89 Train Street in Dorchester. It's a street that is midway between Fields Corner and Neponset Circle. And it was a wonderful change in life.
What I can remember of what I saw in Mission Hill was the language. When I first arrived the next morning, there was some people singing some songs to me because it was a different language. All I could hear was the sounds, not know what they were saying. So in Tremont Street then, the housing development was across the street, and it was in this rear. And basically it was not a safe place to go out at night or anytime. You always have to, your safety was one of the #1 issues to survive on the street. That's how I see it now, but not then, just to be scared of. And unfortunately, my family is composed. My grandmother was an African, and my father was a Spaniel descendant. So I will hear people, the only thing I can, which is sad right now for me, is I could hear was the black people are doing this, and you can't be on the streets, and you can't hang out on Dudley Street, what is now, it was not what it was in the 70s.
In the year '68, I picked up 2 of my brothers in Birmingham and brought them to Boston also, so we got a chance to stay with my mother's youngest brother. And something happened with him and his wife. We decided to, he left us in the house alone. So my mother had 3 boys here. Even though she had a sister here, we didn't stay with her because she had no room for us. So since my brother and I had, that summer, my brother Bernard and myself, we both had jobs. He worked at the VA hospital in Boston. So we saved our money, sent money to Birmingham for our mother, and she brought the whole family here. And that's how we ended up in Boston.
I first came to Boston almost 20 years ago, and I liked it because, you know, you could do things. The area that we're in now was not the place to be, and nobody wanted to be here. When Alicia graduated from Wheaton, I thought, I'm out of here, enough's enough. And I said, is anybody coming back? And Alicia said, and I said, okay, then I'm leaving. So, I mean, they were aghast. What do you mean you're leaving? And I said, I'm out of here. So I sold my home, and I loved it. It was the dearest place I've ever lived. And I decided I would go to Boston. And I did. And I started a whole life in Boston, and it's been one of the it is the best thing that I've ever done.
I think one of the places that influenced my growing up was Savin Hill, another part of Dorchester. My grandmother lived on Saxon Street, and since both my parents worked when I was much younger, I'd spend the summer days over at her house, and this is when I was 8, 9, 10, right in that area there, and had a group of friends over there that we played a lot of street games, stickball, and we by accident almost set the entire neighborhood on fire one time. We devised these little shooters that were made from an empty wooden thread spool, and we would tape elastics around them, and back then kitchen matches, the wooden matches, didn't have any kind of a protective coating and would light on fire as they fell to the ground, and we would shoot these things at each other, and you know, mostly they would go up at our feet. But one day we were shooting into a backyard. There was a section of Saxton Street in Dorchester called the Brick Block, and in the backyard there was a wooden fence that ran the length of the block, and people put all their trash out there, and we were shooting the matches, and it just so happened that the trash along the wooden fence caught fire, and then the wooden fence caught fire, and we were scared stiff because the porches and stairways at the back of the brick buildings were all made of wood. So we did what probably any 10 or 11-year-old kids did. We ran and hid and waited for the fire engines to come. I don't think anybody ever found out that we did it, but we were very fortunate, and I guess so were the people who lived in the brick buildings.
I shop without knowing it in the most expensive places in Boston and downtown Boston, and not knowing any politics about it. So, and you know, I was always quiet, and getting in, it was no problem. Getting out, finding the famous exit that I didn't know was an exit, and how to follow an exit. I would visit all the businesses along Washington Street, Filings, Gilcreeks. There was another one. It was one, IG Fox. I bought myself a lamb coat with a hood and lamb in the bottom for $39. And I never knew. When my daughter's 35, fashion and merchandising, when she saw a picture, she said, "Where is this coat? I can show it to the class." She didn't insist. I didn't know what I had on, what I was wearing.
A lot of development and changes. When I first came to Boston, the tallest building in Boston was the John Hancock, the old John Hancock. You look at Boston now, and you will see how it's changed and developed with so many towers of buildings, fantastic buildings, and you know, it's just the landscaping of it has changed tremendous. I think and also it changed VIA, I would say, how people respect one another and stuff like that. I think when I first came here, it was a little bit different, being from the South and coming into the environment that it presented itself at that particular time. I went through the times when even Boston, coming from a place like Birmingham, and the environment that I lived in Birmingham, where I remember when we couldn't, we had to sit in the back of the buses coming to Boston. It was different. You didn't have to do that when I was here, but yet I think that there was a lot of element of neighborhoods that were very ethnically different that I could see. A lot of, that was similar to what the neighborhoods were there in Birmingham.
When we were told at age 65 that everything would be rosy and wonderful, it ain't, honey. And I didn't want to wait until I was 65. I'm like, why can't we be wonderful now? So I started doing shows about, what are you doing? What makes you happy? What inspires you? And people started talking. And I have, I think, 900 or 1,000 of them. I think people miss a bet by putting dates and deadlines and saying, oh, well, when I get to be, why do you do that? Don't limit yourself. And I never discuss age. I don't want to know how old you are. I don't want you to mention it on the show. We are living every moment until we don't live it anymore. What's over, it's over. But if you've lived it, it's okay.